Assalamu alaikum, family. Peace be unto you. You're tuned in to the Sajda channel, and I'm your host, Sajda Wendy Muhammad. I'm excited this morning to be talking about the concept of preservation. So be a friend, tell a friend, and we'll get started in a few short minutes after a couple commercials and a beautiful prayer. So jump on over, be a friend, tell a friend. We'll see you in a few minutes.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee. And he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who in my judgment is the master historian, taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher. History is most attractive. Why should history be most attractive? Because history is the recorded time of the human family in its struggle to overcome obstacles. There is no life that is without struggle. The Holy Quran teaches us that man, meaning man and woman, is made to face difficulties. And after difficulty comes ease. But it is history that guides us through difficulty. For if you know how people who had difficulty yesterday got through, and if your difficulty is somewhat similar, then today we also can get through if we follow the guidance of history. This is why Carter G. Woodson and many of our black giants fought for black people to know our history. Because in not knowing our history, we don't have a guide. And without a guide, we are lost. No wonder the Bible...
Be nice if I added myself to the stage, right? Assalamu alaikum, family. Welcome to the Sajda channel. Hope everyone is doing well. It looks like summer is finally starting to kick off, at least here in Chicago. We had a chilly weekend, but we jump-started Monday in the 70s, which has been quite lovely. So happy Friday to everyone. Thank you, and thank you. We are fresh off of an amazing weekend over here in the Sajda universe of things. We kicked off Saturday with Black Opera in White with our lovely artist Arlesia, who did an amazing job. Absolutely amazing. If you missed it, don't miss our next events, because I'm telling you, there was some elevation and healing happening in that room. And you all may know this, but you know that the human body vibrates right around somewhere between 60 and 70 megahertz. And the healing process begins somewhere around the 155, 160 to 170 mark. Right? There's a range. It's a little different for everybody. And there's a lot of different ways in which you can access holistic healing in your body. Okay. You can do it with music. You can do it with thoughts. You can do it with nature. Trees vibrate at around 300 megahertz. So going amongst trees is really a quick way, right, to get yourself into a healing phase. But the music that we curated was right in that healing phase. So imagine sitting there listening to this beautiful performance that's hitting in those healing phase zones for an entire hour. Talk about changing your vibration. And so we were excited to do that on our Blessed Mother Tynetta's birth anniversary. And then Sunday, many of us were blessed to be at the Salam restaurant here in Chicago for the 92nd birth anniversary of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So he's such a beautiful soul, and to just be able to look at him that's high vibrational in and of itself. So prior to last weekend, we learned that we are winners of the 2025 City of Chicago Preservation Excellence Awards. And y'all, this is a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for me because this has been a labor of love. And if you know anything about being in labor, it is painful. It's hard. It's a challenge. You know, in this preservation space, there's so much crookedness. There's so much competition. There's so much negativity. There's so much drama. But underneath it all, underneath the root of it, is legacy work that is worth going through because it lays the groundwork and creates an educational platform for those that come behind us. So I want to talk a little bit about what it means to preserve preservation, because I think it's a concept, it's a spiritual concept that is very apropos for where we are right now as a people in this world. Preservation, because we have moved into this phase in our life of just use what we want and throw away the rest, right? It's hurry up, add water and stir, throw away the rest, get rid of the rest of it. And I think it's doing something to our society, and it's taking away something from our ability to accept our own and be ourselves. And it's also doing something to our ability to understand the patterns of history. And I know that as we evolve as a people, there's always this effort to remove the spirituality, to remove the prophecy, to remove what is other than what we see right in front of us. But that's a mistake, in my opinion. And so preservation is critical. We should be preserving our bodies. We should be preserving properties that are important to our underserved communities. We should be preserving and learning the concept of preservation. When I first acquired the former home of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I was blessed to be in a meeting with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and we were talking about the preservation process, and we were talking about myself and my life and who I am. And he said something, well, he always says something very powerful, but one of many of the powerful things that he said was, he said, Allah was preparing you for this since before you were born. And that really struck something in me, because it made me start to think about, collecting and preserving things as a child, collecting coins and different things like that. And so it made me go to a deeper, more spiritual level when it came to preservation, because getting into the field, it's easy to get into it at a real estate level. And at the real estate level, you got all the predatory capitalism, you got all the political stuff that happens as a result of preserving anything. The political stuff is attached to the predatory value, predators who see the value or don't see the value. There's that level, but it forced me to go deeper. And so I want to do that these next 2 days as we're leading up to our award acceptance on Monday, okay, with the city of Chicago. So let me just give you a brief definition of preservation and what it, and preservation at the root is the word to preserve. It's a phrase, it's a verbal phrase in essence, to preserve. Preserve is the verb. To preserve something means to keep it in its original state, in good condition, or safe from harm or loss. It can involve preventing decay, maintaining something, or protecting it from destruction. Preservation can apply to various things, including physical objects, historical sites, natural resources, and even intangible concepts like rights or traditions. And so I want us to stop for a minute and think about that. And we're going to kind of break down a few of those concepts in that definition. But I want us to think about that from a spiritual standpoint, in preserving who we are as a people, in preserving our culture, our teachings, our religion, our experiences. If you were here during the intro of the show, I played a video where the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about the importance of history. Okay. And you can go back and listen to, I won't interrupt our flow, but I want you to go back and take a listen to that. Because one of the quotes from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that I think is very apropos here is that history is the best at rewarding its student. See, when you understand history, you understand patterns. You can celebrate your greatness. We talk a lot in Chicago about the Great Migration. And I always think about my grandmother in 1945 migrating from Louisiana up north and to Nebraska. And wouldn't it have been great to have a journal from her? I would love to have had a journal that I could open up and say, this is what she experienced. This is what she saw. Was she on the cars with the Pullman porters? Who else rode that train with her? How much did it cost? Did she have to transfer? What happened when she first got up here? What was she looking for? What were her hopes? What were her dreams? Am I living and walking into those hopes and dreams? I think that would be so powerful. And so one of the things that we're working on doing within the Sajda House brand is creating a publishing house where you can publish your books that talk about your experiences as a Muslim and as a person from a community whose history is oftentimes liquidated and unpersoned. Also at the root of our preservation efforts is not only the process by which we preserve something, it's why we preserve it and whose efforts are we looking to uphold and preserve. That's also important as well, right? It's the builder of the home, it's the architect, it's the inhabitants of the home. In our case, it's the great inhabitant, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But it's maintaining a state. We talk a lot in emotional intelligence about emotional states. And if you want to understand history, it's important to understand states, mental states, emotional states, design states, conditions. It's really important for us as a people, because oftentimes we are cut off from our history and we're operating out here like new people with no benefit of what happened before us. We don't know what happened before Columbus. Thank God for Ivan Van Sertima, who wrote the book They Came Before Columbus. Otherwise, we wouldn't even know that we were here before Columbus. But when you are in a position like we're in, where your history is oftentimes rewritten, your heroes are unpersoned, liquidated, and you're dealing with a people who are using the benefit of their knowledge of history to pinch you off from yours. And so part of our generational legacy should be to pass on truth. One of the most difficult things with us as a people, when I started getting into this preservation space, is we lie so much. We make up stuff. We've learned this thing of manipulating stories so that they fit the history that we want to tell. But let's work on preserving the truth. So when I talked about the definition to preserve, one of the concepts that came up was maintaining a state. So preservation can mean keeping something as it is without changing it or letting it deteriorate. For example, preserving a historic building means ensuring its structural integrity and keeping it in its original architectural style. So when people hear somebody wrote a nasty comment on the Sajda House Instagram page when I posted that we had won the award, and they said, well, what difference do it make? And I remember even having this conversation with someone when we got listed on the National Historic Registry. Now, at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, if nobody recognizes us, we're going to keep going. But here's why it's important. Because if our history is being preserved in a manner that maintains the design and architectural integrity of a piece of property, which is what we've done with Sajda House, also known as Elijah Muhammad House. We've got close to 97%, 98%, may even be more than that, of the original architectural integrity. Some of our plans are to make the first floor look the way it looked in the 60s. And so recreating that state where all of those visitors came in to meet with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But for the most part, the home is in the same architectural condition that it was in when it was originally built in 1902. Now, the house was completed in 1902, but it took about 2 years for them to build it. So they started it in 1900. You got to remember, some of these types of equipment and things like that we use to build large homes and large buildings like that didn't exist. And so it took time to construct these spaces. And this one took about roughly around 2 years to construct. Also protecting from harm. Preservation also involves protecting something from damage, destruction, or loss. This could be protecting natural resources from exploitation, preserving cultural heritage from vandalism, or safeguarding one's reputation from libel. Now, let's go back for a minute to maintaining a state. And I like us to think about this in terms of not just a building, but our physical body, as well as our spiritual body. You can think of this from spiritual, physical, financial, mental, psychological. How are you preserving your mind? How are you preserving your ability to evolve as a human being in a healthy way? How are you preserving the organs in your body? How are you preserving your teeth, your eyes, your skin? How are you making that preservation relevant, excuse me, so that you can live a long and prosperous life? How much are you exercising? How much are you creating resistance in your body so that, you keep everything nice and tight and up and perky? How are you doing that? We were talking Sunday. I was sitting at the table with Sister Nala, also known as Sister Carmela from Let's Eat to Live. And we were talking about what we looked like back in our Vanguard days. And she said, "Sister, you were so skinny." I said, "Yeah, I know. They used to joke that I could hula hoop with a Cheerio." And so we were talking about how, we were all on these fitness journeys, and we don't want to go back to the Cheerio hula hooping days, but that we wanted to continue to engage in a process to preserve our body. And she, of course, has a restaurant, and we were talking about preserving food and eating the right kind of food, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaching us what time of day to eat and how much to eat, and taking ourselves through that fasting state so that we're not overtaxing our digestive system, and we can maintain those healthy enzymes in our system and keep ourselves looking young. We should be living up to 150 years of age without being broken down and messed up. So this is why I want you to think deeper than just the building. This is a spiritual process, preservation, preserving your relationship with God, preserving your ability to love, preserving. Also, in some of these lessons that I've learned from the minister during this process is not to allow yourself to be disappointed. And so how do you preserve your mental state? How do you preserve your love for something? Preservation. All right. Preventing decay is the next segment. In the context of food, for example, preservation refers to methods used to prevent spoilage or decomposition. This can be done through canning, freezing, drying, or other techniques. I hope you guys are starting to see how important preservation is in our lives. We're also taught in the Nation of Islam to preserve food, to store food for that rainy day, for that time of potential famine. We should be storing water and food in our home. Preservation. How are we preserving our body from decay? Are we just sitting up on the couch and just letting ourselves rot? Are we just letting gravity take over our body and we're not out here working, walking? Do you know that exercise helps to ignite certain nerves and chemicals in your body that can help to preserve your body? Did you know that? Did you know that your muscles produce chemicals? Your liver, your kidneys, they need chemicals and they produce chemicals in order to help you to maintain a healthy lifestyle. This body was meant to go some. And while it may not live forever, we can do our part in preserving it. Some of us, we are decaying so much on the inside that when you walk up to us, you could smell the decay on us. Some of that decay starts in the mind. Did you know that bad breath comes oftentimes from your thought? Yeah, it can come from halitosis. It can come from tooth decay, but it can also come from a chemical that is released in the back of your brain here. That is released when you think certain thoughts. It's why spiritual people can smell negativity on your breath. Did you know that? So it's best to keep you some mints or cloves around so people don't always know what you're thinking. I find it interesting how we vibrate oftentimes at such a low tone that we forget that there are some people who vibrate at a higher tone that can see you, can read you, can feel you. And some of us have epigenetic gifts that were passed down to us through generation, where we can see and read and heal. That's a whole nother subject. All right. Preserving for future use. What in your life are you preserving from future use? Preservation can also mean keeping something available for future use, like preserving food for later consumption or preserving historical documents for research. See, when you understand the patterns of history, you can easily predict the future. When you think about the original man and woman, the makers, the owners, the cream of the planet Earth, the descendants of the creators are always creating something new. And so we are the ones who are making new things. We take pain and transform it into organizations. We take experiences and transform them into products, services, dances, music. We are always transforming and creating. We're always making lemonade out of lemons. But people who are not original people and who don't function like original people are not able to create. See, all they can do is destroy or subtract. And so what does that mean? That means that it's interesting because, you know, if they succeed in what they think they could do, which they can't do this, but of wiping us off the planet, do you know that there would be nothing left for them? Because the practice of this destructive person is that they do not create. They just steal, kill, destroy, and subtract. So it's incumbent upon us to preserve and recreate from that which we are preserving. Why? Because there are people who will come behind us who don't respect the creativity from which they come from. and they will destroy everything that's been created. Let me know in the chat if y'all getting this. I see y'all here. Happy Friday, Mom. Thank you for being on. Nubia Latifa, congratulations. Thank you, sis. Sandra D. Walaikum salam, ma'am. Sister Monica is in the house. Walaikum salam. Great Friday to you as well. Let me know in the chat if you're getting this. The spiritual process behind preservation. See, when Master Fard Muhammad came here to North America, he gave us a survey. And those of us that came into the Nation of Islam, we had to recite certain aspects of that survey of the universe that he gave to us. And so part of what is incumbent upon us is to preserve what was given to us and to preserve where we are, to preserve this universe, to preserve this earth, not so that we can keep it and hoard it and say, oh, this is mine and I get this value, but so that we can see it, study it, and continue to evolve and recreate. That's the deep power of preservation. Okay? You can preserve a concept or an idea, right? We have so many great people who walked this earth before us, who did so many amazing things, whose concepts and ideas have been liquidated and they've been unpersoned to the point where we don't even know that they exist. And somebody else came along and stole their idea and concept, and we had no idea. We have to preserve that as well. I love learning about all the amazing things that we've invented as a people and understanding how important it is that we preserve it. Now, some of us are shallow enough to think that if we love ourselves, that means that love knows. This is about self-love. Did you know that too much self-sacrifice is a very low vibrational or a low tone way of living? Do y'all realize that? Do you realize that if you are in a position in your life where you have to do a tremendous amount of self-sacrificing, that you have to be deliberate about raising your vibration? We talked about those tone levels. Do you know that you have to be deliberate about your thoughts? You want to be deliberate about being happy, about laughing, about releasing those chemicals in your body? Because if you're sacrificing all the time, it can be a very low tone or a low vibrational activity. And so you don't want to live there. You want to make sure that you are incorporating ways in your life that you can uplift your vibration. And there's many ways that you can do that. So let's talk about preserving a concept or an idea. Preservation can also extend to preserving ideas, values, or practices. This might involve passing on knowledge, maintaining cultural traditions, or upholding legal principles. I want to talk about the two concepts in there: passing on knowledge and maintaining cultural traditions. Because we live in a world where we have inherently been taught to disrespect those that came before us. We don't live in a society that respects people as they get older. We still live in a very colonizing slave mentality type of culture, because in that production slave culture, humans were valued based on what they were able to produce. And so, since there was no respect for the knowledge that happened prior to the kidnapping, they didn't want to hear what was coming through you and the downloads that we get the blessing to share on these podcasts and things like that. It was all about what you could produce. And so if you were at a young age and you were able to produce other enslaved people, if you were able to lift more hay, bale more cotton, tow more on the barge, whatever you were able to do, you meant more. I was looking at a program the other day about the establishment of the railroad. And they're talking about this great thing that was so revolutionary because it connected the cities together. So you could live in Boston and get to LA because of the railroad. You could ship goods. So it changed capitalism. Because prior to that, people pretty much just purchased things that were available to them in their immediate area. They didn't really travel to go and buy something. But now you could buy a piece of leather or a piece of shoes from somebody in Boston if you lived in Mississippi because of the railroad. I said, but what about the people who laid the railroad ties? Where's the homage for them? They talked about the Pullman porters. Great. But what about the labor that laid those railroad ties so that those railroad cars could travel over those railroad ties? See, because if you don't preserve that part of the history, it's easy for you to think all I need to do is invent a piece of transportation. Who built the roads? Who cut out the roads initially so that we could get from one place to another? Who cut out the prairies and the landscapes so that those railroad ties could be laid? This just wasn't flat land. A lot of this was prairie and rock. And who did that? So think about during that point in time and prior, what value were you to that company if you were younger and you could lay more railroad ties? Now, fast forward today. There's so much wisdom that we gain as we get older. The average millionaire nowadays is 50. They talk about the 30-year-old millionaire, but there ain't that many of them. There's some people out here getting it, but there's not that many. Where's the wisdom? How do we learn? If we say old people out to pasture and we don't want to talk to them no more, how do we learn? How do we learn the patterns of what happened to us and what could be and what should be important to us? How do we know that? See, this is where we as Black people, we got to get back to the old school. We've adopted this this rugged individualism, this nuclear family thing that we did not come from. It was a village that raised the children, that preserved the society, that elevated the community. It was the village. It was the elders that taught us about the sun, the moon, and the stars so that we understood how to utilize that knowledge and evolve ourselves as a people. It was the elders that should be teaching us as women how to navigate our relationships, as men how to take care of our families so that we don't get everything all mixed up and confused. Where is our knowledge and our benefit from preserving our people? Huh? because it's all one big puzzle. But if we throw pieces of the puzzle away because we don't want to learn about the puzzle, it's too old, it don't look right. But what's so beautiful is that Allah is preserving a lot of us for us. 60 years old today, that ain't 60 like our grandmothers them 60 or our great grandmothers them 60. The average slave only lived to 52 years old. And as soon as we got up out of that, we started living to be a little bit longer. A lot longer. You hear about the people who live to be up in their hundreds. But as soon as we got that burden up off of our back, we could preserve our bodies a little bit longer. So let's teach our children, okay, while they're young, things like smoking and drinking that society tells us we should do while we're young. See, y'all be sending y'all children to these college campuses and y'all think they up there learning, but there's a whole lot of drinking, whole lot of smoking, a whole lot of drugging, and a whole lot of sex, and a whole lot of stuff happening that is cutting years off of their lives. And y'all come back and smile when they get that degree. But what you don't know is that during that 4-year period, they just took 20 years off of their life with the behaviors that somebody told them or showed them were a way of life. This is a rite of passage. This is how you have fun. This is why you see people in their 40s and 50s and their bodies are aging as if they're in their 60s and 70s. See, because what you do in your 20s dictates how you're going to be moving forward. So we have to teach our children from a very young age about the power of preserving their bodies. We think it's okay to go buy them some candies with red dye number 40 in it. But what we don't realize is that we're setting them up for the onset of immune deficiency and cancerous diseases that are coming about as early now as their 30s and 40s. So let's teach our children how to preserve their bodies. And if we are teaching them the art of preservation in general, we should incorporate how to preserve our bodies. See, it was nothing back in the day for us to go to the corner store, get a bag of Now Laters. People now, the famous Trayvon Martin, a bag of Skittles, all that red dye in it. These fake juices that we're drinking. We got children now who are addicted to sugar, pure sugar addicts. And they're not going to live long. We're shortening their lives. So this preservation thing is bigger. What are we putting into our bodies? Why are we throwing away things that are precious? Before you throw something in the garbage, take a look at it. Should I be throwing this away? Could somebody else use this? Can this be repurposed? We did that with the house. We repurposed materials, things to make tables, mantles, mirrors. We preserved the copper. You can go to the website now, sajdahouse.com, and get a copper coin made of recycled copper. How valuable is that? Wouldn't you just love to hold something in your hand that once absorbed the energy of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? Wouldn't you love to hold something in your hand that your great-great-grandmother once held, once interacted with? This is how we got to fall in love with ourselves over and over again. There were people that told me that during the opera on Saturday, they became overwhelmed. I think it was Sister Maya or Sister Louise, who I tell everybody, she's the one who taught us our prayers, taught us how to prostrate and the whole process of doing of prayer, of our prayer service, if you will, in the Nation of Islam. And she said that it just hit her. I'm sitting in a room on a floor that he walked on, that he dwelled in, on wood that once upheld him, that absorbed his energy. What does this mean to us? And what is that energy transferring over to us now that we are preserving it? So when you go among a tree, I'm going to save this second part for tomorrow. I wanted to talk deeper about historic preservation. We'll save it until tomorrow. But if you go among a tree, and I had an experience like this with trees. I was in a forest preserve in Maryland. And I drove there to release some energy and to receive some energy. And so I wanted to go among these trees that have been living for hundreds of years. And I said, I just want to exchange energy with them. And so these trees were so tall that when you went into the trail, it got dark. Like it looked like it was nighttime. Like you could literally look back and it was daylight. It was summertime. It was like 3:00 in the afternoon. But then as you walked into the trail, it literally got dark. And so I went in there and I found a space to meditate. There are people, they're walking and riding their bikes and everything. And so I could feel the powerful vibration of the trees. And so I just started talking. I said, you know so much. You've experienced so much. Because remember, those trees are vibrating at 300 megahertz. Me as a human being, I'm at 60 to 75-ish. So these hundreds of trees in this forest preserve are just pulsating like mad. And I just remember the renewing of energy and the healing that I felt. And I sat in there maybe about a good 30 minutes. And then I walked the rest of it to the other side and, until I came out to another space. I've done that before where I've actually gotten lost up in the trails. That's a whole nother process. But my point being is, I was so grateful in that moment for the preservation of those trees. And I never thought of myself as a tree hugger. But the experience with those trees was so overwhelming that literally tears were just flowing from my eyes. And now I'm looking at the nature, the plants, and all of that, and looking at what we've preserved and what has been preserved for us to experience from. Who knows what the access to those trees lifted up off of me? Who knows what ancestral DNA I was able to connect with as a result of the preservation of those trees. So preservation, the process, is a critical one. It's a universal one that we must think about. We must be concerned. We must preserve our history as members of the Nation of Islam. We must preserve our history of no matter who you are. If you're a Black Catholic person, what is your history as a Black Catholic person? If you are a Black person from a certain street in Chicago, what is that history that needs to be preserved? And how are you going to preserve it? And pretty soon, we're going to have a tool that you'll be able to use to preserve your history. What'd you say, Sister Monica? She said, absolutely getting it. Thank you, sis. Preserve was a word I had the orientation sisters to parse recently in their class. Refreshing to hear this. Orientation, my favorite. My orientation experience is still with me. And then I taught orientation here in Chicago for about 7 years. And that class has blessed me for over 20 years, just looking in the faces of sisters who I remember seeing. And I'm going to tell you something, Sister Monica. When those sisters walked in that class, I wanted to preserve the God that began to awaken in them, that not only encouraged them to walk into that class and take this journey, but that also birthed them into this world. Because we all showed up on the planet for a reason. And it's our job to discover that and to figure out what we showed up for here. It's never too late. Never too late. But as we sojourn, as we navigate the vicissitudes of life, we must understand what's important for us to preserve and what we can preserve that we can pass on. And maybe we don't have other people, other children in our family who really care about it. A lot of us come from families where there's not a lot of interrelated respect. And so the children in the family don't necessarily care to hear about what we've gone through, but there's somebody that can benefit from it. And so don't just look immediately around you. Look and see. What do you have that could be donated to a school? If you don't think your children or your nieces or nephews will appreciate it, how can you donate it to preserve it? All right. So with that, family, I just want to say happy Friday. Make sure you love somebody today. Make sure you're sharing love. Make sure you're vibrating with that spirit of love. Make sure you're human medicine today, that you're helping someone to heal. And to each and every one of you, I'm wishing you, each and every one of you, more goodness, more love, more health, more peace, more alignment than you've ever experienced or even imagined. You know what I hope for you? You know what the best feeling is? Is that you receive blessings that you didn't even see coming. I pray somebody blesses you today and you didn't even see it coming. I pray that you experience and you get off of this show right now and walk right into a blessing that you didn't even expect. You didn't even see it coming. That's what I hope to command from the universe for each and every one of us here today. So stay tuned. Our next event is going to be the Black Waltz in White. I worked on the promo yesterday, and so we'll be announcing that soon. And so that's coming up. That's going to be in conjunction with Waltz and Etiquette Chicago. Brother Tim and his lovely wife, Nadia. We're going to be putting that on at the Elijah Muhammad House Museum, also known as Sajda House. And so now that the house is being elevated as the Elijah Muhammad House, you're going to see more of the production brand of Sajda House that I've been working on for all these years in the programming. That's all Sajda House. So you're going to begin to see that. So thank you so much. Thank you, each and every one of you, for listening. I hope you got something out of this today. Make sure you support the movement. It's here. Go to Cash App, Sajda Enterprises, and support. You can Zelle us, wendy100m@gmail.com. If you forget, just go to Cash App, Sajda Enterprises. $10, $15, $20. Why do I say that? Because I want to open us up so that we learn to give when we receive something. We got to get out of this mode of being subtraction-based people who steal, like, got it, and who are always looking for what they can get out of something or somebody else, and not realizing that the key is to vibrate with a flow. Y'all heard me just talking about those blessings that you never saw coming. Bless somebody like that today. Bless somebody in your life, in your family, a friend. Send them something. Give them something that they never saw coming. Something that you probably would have wasted or threw away. Okay, family. Love you all. I'm going to re-show the video where the minister talks about history, just to close us out with that. And we'll see you all tomorrow. I also have a money psychology assessment that's out here. Next week, going to be our money psychology week. And so we're going to dive deeper into that. But there's a QR code on my Facebook and Instagram pages where you can take a money psychology assessment. We got to get this thing together. But we got a lot of stuff happening this summer. So stay tuned. And I'll see you all, inshallah, tomorrow morning right here on the Sajda channel. Don't go anywhere.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who in my judgment is the master historian, taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher. History is most attractive. Why should history be most attractive? Because history is the recorded time of the human family in its struggle to overcome obstacles. There is no life that is without struggle. The Holy Quran teaches us that man, meaning man and woman, is made to face difficulties. And after difficulty comes ease. But it is history that guides us through difficulty. For if you know how people who had difficulty yesterday got through, and if your difficulty is somewhat similar, then today we also can get through if we follow the guidance of history. This is why Carter G. Woodson and many of our black giants fought for black people to know our history. Because in not knowing our history, we don't have a guide. And without a guide, we are lost. No wonder the Bible